Alright, so we're in the back of the car. We're just about to make up a plan to transpose onto the ply that we're going to use to cut and shape into the same as this back section of the car, so it's nice and snug. It won't move because it'll be tight, or reasonably tight, all around all the curves and wheel arches and so forth. And then we'll put, it won't be fixed into the car. I'm not going to screw it through the base of the car. I don't want to put holes in the car. But what I will do is I'll put the carpet on top, so you will kind of won't really see it, and the carpet will cover it, and then everything else will go on top of the carpet, and then whatever I put on it will be screwed through the carpet into that sheet of ply. So the frame that goes at the back there behind the cargo barrier, when it goes in behind the seat, the frame that takes the storage boxes will be hard up against that. It'll be screwed into the ply. The fridge here will have some clips in it to hold it down into this corner when I go off-road. So what we use to make this plan is what's referred to as either a joggle stick or a tick stick, depending on what trade you're coming from. And if you don't come from any trade at all, pick the name you like. What it is a piece of scrap timber, or can be a piece of scrap timber. In my case it's a bit of masonite, and the key to the joggle stick is that it has a point on one end, and then it has random shapes along its length, and none of those two shapes are the same. So then what we do is we find a point that we want to replicate on the ply later, and in this case, as an example, we'll use the side panel of the car and where the wheel arch touches it. Put that point into that corner, drop the joggle stick onto the piece of timber, and draw along one edge of that joggle stick, trace around it I should say, around the one from the very edge of the board up to the first characteristic, and they're all unique. So when I put this joggle stick back onto this sheet, when it's sitting on top of the ply I'm about to cut, it can't go on any other way, because each of these points is unique. Whether I use it that way or whether I use it that way, none of these points that I've created on my joggle stick can be confused in any way whatsoever with any of the other points on the joggle stick. So whether I use it that way or that way in the same job is fine. So once we put it back onto, once we sit this board on top of the ply, tape it down so it doesn't move, line this joggle stick up with the lines that we've put in this case here, and when that's perfectly lined up, put a dot at that point, and that point will replicate this point in the car. So the more points that we do around moving the joggle stick around the car, that way the angle is irrelevant, whether you can see it, whether the angle's that way or wherever you want to put it, it makes no difference whatsoever, because once you put that back onto that line, that point is going to be in the same spot that it's sitting right now, and that'll then transpose onto the ply. We'll join those lines up, and then we just cut around them. Most effective, easiest, cheapest way to replicate a shape inside, especially inside like a quite enclosed area, that makes it very, very difficult to do it any other way. Alright, so we'll start joggling. So we get that point and shove it right into that back corner, and lie it down. Give us a bit of space to work, and draw a line from the edge to the first characteristic on that stick, and then around the other side. And what you can do on here is just write corner, so that's the driver's corner, and then we can do the same in the other side, and that's going to be, so we'll leave a little bit of space on this side because we've got the jack door there, so we'll leave that a bit of space. Right, so we'll just write on that passenger corner. Right, and from that point we just start moving around the car. So there's another point about there, and we can make that line going over the top of the other lines. Makes no difference whatsoever, because all of these points are unique. So we can just write rear arch, Just makes it a little bit, if you get a lot of points, if you're putting a lot of points into your car, into your board from your joggle stick, it makes it a little bit easier down the track if you give them a bit of a label. Now give some of them a bit of a label so you know what the reference is. And that's the wheel arch. So we just put an arrow here for front, and then that way I know when I put it back onto the board that I know what the orientation of it is. See, I might not actually do it today. Once I do this, I might bugger off home. Obviously use a sharp pencil, and you just keep going around. So for example, going around to that point there, which you can't see, so maybe that point there, then that point there, then it's going to be straight along there, so it's not going to matter, so you won't have to worry about that. That's straight. You can come back later on once you've transposed all these pieces of information or the points onto the piece of ply. You can then bring the ply close to the car and you can line it up and draw it, and you'll see the general shape of what you've created, and then you can just do these corners by eye, or you can do them with a joggle stick. Makes no difference. You get too many, unless you're used to it, if you get too many lines onto this piece of board from the joggle stick, it can get a little bit confusing. They overlap each other and they will become a little bit confusing. But anyway, you can work that out as you go along, and but when I can assure you that once it's done and done correctly, and all it is just time and patience. Once you transpose those points back onto that piece of ply that you're going to use and cut that out, I'll guarantee that it'll fit like a bloody glove. I'll try and get an overall view. That's the piece of MDF that I'll put ahead in the back of the car, that I'll use the joggle stick on, and these are all the points that I've used from the back of the car, and these are where the joggle stick lines up there. And then I've already pointed the marks out on the board, so there's two there as we go around. So this is the back of the car, and then we're going up the driver's side. That's the rear of the wheel arch as we go around, and so we've marked out all those onto the board, and using the joggle stick. And if we line that up with that one there, all the way across to the end, and you'll see across here, and that lines up to that point there, and that's what we've used. These ones here, I've written on my marks because sometimes they get a little bit busy, so sometimes it's not a bad idea if you make some notes on them. So this is the so we'll try and get a picture that way. This says curve A, and there's curve A as well. So these are these 2 points over here. So when I mark these 2 points here, I know that they're for a curve, and then when I mark them with the texter, I then write curve on there. So then I'll just do that by hand. I've done another one there, and then I've written on, I think that one there's driver's side corner, so I know that that's a back corner on the driver's side. I've got passenger side corner on this side. So I've made notes on there, so I know, so I don't have to keep going backwards and forwards to the car and checking stuff, because it's all written down here. So hopefully you can kind of get a bit of an overall of how that's panned out there as far as the marks on the board are concerned. And now this board here is only 1200 wide, so I'm a bit short of board, but that's no problem because this is right inside the car against the back of the cargo barrier, so I'll just cut a strip straight through here. I'll taper it off around the corners there because that will help it to stop moving, and then I'll biscuit join it to the end of that. There's no structural integrity between this one and this one because I don't need it, so I don't have to worry too much about getting an extra size board or doing it the other way and splitting it down through the middle and having the same on either side, and then biscuit joining it through the middle, because then all the strength will be that way rather than that way. But I don't need the strength up the front here, so that's not going to cause me any dramas. But there's a number of ways. You just put it together as a jigsaw puzzle with the obviously the parts where you need the structural integrity. They're the parts that are solid, and the parts that don't need so much of the structural stuff will be joined. I could have also joined it along the back here, because if I joined it along the back, this cuts around here. I've got to measure that back out. That's the back of the car, and it will. So if I was to cut it through here and move my template up that way and have the extra bit along the back, it would lock in, because it would lock in around this point here, and then it would lock in across the join, and then this section here would then lock in around the wheel arch, so it can't move anywhere. But it doesn't, in my case, it doesn't really matter either. I prefer it up the other end, because this is where I get in and out of the car. So if there's going to be any bending of the timber, it's not going to be in this area here. So then we'll cut it out, and then we'll fit it into the car and see how it comes up. This area here, which is the rear corner of my car on the driver's side, that I haven't taken any of these joggle stick points, and this is the passenger side. This is the end of the plastic strip that goes along the back door, and this is the back corner of the panel. So I haven't done anything in here because I'm going to just make a cardboard template to roll around there, because I want that to be as close to follow as much as I can, because the panel of the car, say in relation to this side, the panel of the car comes down on a slight angle here. So I want it to roll around that quite smoothly. So I'm going to use a cardboard template for that. This area here on the passenger side, that's where I've got a removable hatch door that comes off around here. It's got an odd shape to it, and that's where my car jack is and stuff like that. So I also want that to be relatively snug, and I don't want it to rub on anything, so I want to make this area here and this area here, and on this side over here, as accurate as I can. The rest of it will be fine, where I've marked all that out, but I'm going to make a cardboard template for this, and then on this side, which is slightly different width to the driver's side, and then I'm going to cut around that hatch there so it slides in nicely, looks all neat and that. So I'll do that with a template. So this is the driver's side, where I'm going to make the template. In the bottom underneath this vinyl, structural floor ribs. So I'm going to have to take those into account when I put the piece of ply on. So what I've done is I've just got a large piece of timber that's going to cover quite a few of those ribs. So that's actually where the ply is going to sit. So if I jam that there near the corner, get a piece of cardboard and fit it into that corner, I can then draw around it and work out where that board's going to actually sit and how it's going to fit over the top around this point here. And they're the bits that I haven't actually used the joggle stick for, because I think it'll be a little bit more accurate for me if I do it with a template. And it would likewise be probably more accurate if you used a template around the whole thing, but it's just not viable to do that. The joggle stick will do that job pretty good. So what I'm going to do here, I'll just tilt the camera down a bit. So what I'll do in here is jam that piece of timber in there, mark the template around. Now this is the area here that I was saying before where it slopes down. So I want the timber to be as snug to that curve as I can, and then I'm going to chamfer the timber underneath so it then fits in nice and neatly up against here. So you won't see that from the outside, you won't see that cutaway from the outside, so it'll just roll around this corner a lot smoother and over the top of this vinyl, which will stay in place. And on the other side, it's a slightly different width in here than what it is on the passenger side. Slightly different width between this point and the plastic strip on the passenger side, but I need to cut around this here so I can neatly undo that, and I can just lift that up and it will slide back down behind the ply. That's the whole idea, and I'll do that with cardboard templates. Alright, So this is a template for the driver's side. The passenger side will be much the same, but I won't do that as well. And working out with a piece of this 12mm ply, which is an offcut of what I'm going to put on the actual floor, I've worked out on with the, get rid of the larger piece. We put this piece in, whoops, we put this piece in about here, over the top of those ribs, so it's going to sit flush, where if we put it in here and jam it against that ply, the vinyl on the floor, that's the point in this spot right here, that's the point where the ply needs to stop, because it's now touching the ply, the vinyl, and the vinyl is against that metal. So that's as close as it's going to be able to get at this point here, so when it rolls around the corner. So what I've done then, sorry, maybe it's in there a bit further. Anyway, so what I've done then is I've marked this template as to where that needs to cut around. But what I'll do is I'll cut, it's about 20mm from the edge of this ply at the top to that point there. So if I get my ruler, jam it along the top there, it's about 20mm. So what I'll do is I'll cut this ply 20mm longer, and then I'll chamfer the bottom of it so it'll come into a point. So the timber will then roll around this point here, but underneath this part it'll be chamfered off on a 45-degree angle or thereabouts. So it'll be a lot neater finish. I think it'll make a little bit more sense once it's done, and you'll see what the end result is, and you'll understand how hopefully understand how I've gone about that. But this is me being slightly anal about the actual finish of the job and how I want it to look. If you're not as anal as me and you just want to get the ply in, the joggle stick thing will do the whole lot of it. Alright, so the board's finished. Pretty happy with the results. That's from, most of this is from the joggle stick. These corners here were done with a cardboard template, and this the board only comes in an 8x4 or 2400 by 1200. It's much wider and longer, maybe 200mm wider, so about 14 by 14 or thereabouts. So I've used the length of the board for this back section, and then I've just biscuit jointed a 200mm bit to the front of that, and which I might have to trim down later on, because when the cargo barrier goes in, I suspect that it might come in, you know, maybe 50mm further in from where that board is. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Once everything goes in, it'll be really good. It gives me a really good substrate to screw to, fix brackets to, and stuff like that. And I've got a bit of marine carpet which I had in the car before, because the back of these things come with, it's just vinyl, so I had that carpet running right through, right up to the back of the front seats there. So I'll put that carpet back on and just trim it at the end of the board over there, and then we're ready to go. We'll start making the storage units up and fit that in. So now with the carpet laid on top of the ply, which none of it's actually fixed in, the ply itself's not fixed in, and neither is the carpet attached to the ply, it just sits on top, doesn't move at all. Everything locks in around the wheel arches and into these corners, and the finished product is really good. Very happy with it, doesn't move at all. We've been away on a few rough trips, and it's performed very well. And whatever I attach into it will be with these furniture nuts, and so we've put the fridge. The fridge has been on, it sits in this corner here, and I've just screwed it down into here where I thought was the best place for a fridge. And then what we'll do is take the ply out, it just slides out, there's hardly any issue with that. Bore a hole in it, stick these furniture nuts up from underneath, and drill a hole through where the screw's already gone through into the base of the fridge, what the fridge is actually strapped down to, and then a couple of these down through the top. And these things are captive, so they stay in there, and they've got little teeth on them so they won't spin around, and works out very well. And so I can take stuff out, put stuff in, and then just bolt it down with my fingers, and everything will stay in it that needs to stay in it. Yeah, so very happy, looks really good. It's turned the back of the troop carrier, which is pretty shitty really with the vinyl in the back. It's turned it into almost car-like and protected it really well. And so that can come out. It's very easy to clean. You can just pull the carpet out, pull the ply out, vacuum it all, chuck it all back in again. So it's pretty good.